Over the course of the past few weeks, we have been talking about Boros Mice in Standard. We've talked about a deck tech where we talked about card choices and overall strategy, how to play the deck. We've talked about a sideboard guide against the top 10 most popular decks in Standard. We've talked about flex slots and different builds of the deck and nuances and play patterns you need to know whether you're playing or playing against the deck. And I'll combine all of those into one giant deep dive. Enjoy. So this is Boros Mice in Standard, and it is decidedly different than the mice synergies in Gruul, which is like the premier aggro deck. This leans even further into those mouse synergies. And let's talk about the synergies first, and then we'll talk about the supporting cards. So these are all of the mice in the deck. Now, the primary synergies that you should be familiar with if you play Standard at all are the synergies among these cards. So Heartfire Hero is a 1-mana 1/1, has Valiant whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is very powerful. But then when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So when you pump it up with +1/+1 counters and pump spells like Monster Rage and things like that, and then it dies in combat, it deals a lot of damage, which is amazing. The other Valiant card we're playing that you should be familiar with is Emberheart Challenger, which is a 2-mana 2/2 with haste and prowess, which is already pretty powerful. We'd probably play that anyway, but it has Valiant whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn. Exile the top card of your library until end of turn. You may play that card. And so this obviously triggers off of these auras, off of Monstrous Rage, off of Shard Mage Rescue, all of that stuff, but it also triggers off of Manifold Mouse. Manifold Mouse is a 2-mana 1/2 with Offspring, which means you can make a 1/1 copy of it if you pay that additional 2 mana. At the beginning of combat in your turn, target mouse you control gains their choice of Double Strike or Trample until end of turn. So at the beginning of combat, Manifold Mouse can give Heartfire Hero and Emberheart Challenger their Valiant triggers by giving them Double Strike or Trample. Normally you're going to be giving Double Strike. So that's great. This is already played in the red decks in Standard. But the additional mice that we're playing is Flowerfoot Swordmaster, which is a 1-mana 1/2 with Offspring 2. So again, you can pay that additional 2 mana and get a 1/1 copy of it. And it also has Valiant. So it will also trigger off of these auras and Monstrous Rage and Manifold Mouse. And whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, mice you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. And so this rewards you for having a lot of powerful mice on the battlefield and very much rewards you for going really, really wide with those mice. We're also playing Mabel, Heir to the Cragflame, which is a 3-mana 3/3, says other mice get +1/+1, which having a Lord is already great. The issue is it's legendary, but when Mabel, Heir of the Cragflame enters, create Cragflame, which is a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has Vigilance, Trample, Haste, and Equip 2, which having that extra equipment, especially an equipment that gives vigilance, which allows us to block and attack, is very, very good. But really we're playing this as a Mouse Lord. And between the Mouse Anthem, Mouse Lord, and being able to easily trigger those Valiant abilities and having a lot of mice anyway, this is a really, really cool Kindred deck. That being said, we have some supporting cards. We do have some supporting creatures just to add to the aggro. We're playing Hired Claw, which is a 1-mana 1/2. Whenever you attack with one or more lizards, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you can pay 2 mana to put a +1/+1 counter on Hired Claw. Activate only if an opponent has lost life this turn and only once each turn. Effectively, this is a 2-power 1-drop in practice, and it's a great mana sink. Sometimes you get flooded and you need to just make a creature huge, and Hired Claw can do that. And we're playing a single Screaming Nemesis in the main deck. It makes combat really weird for our opponent, and makes it so our opponent can't gain life if we're able to get Screaming Nemesis to have dealt damage, which we can do to ourselves with Burst Lightning or Lightning Helix. So that rounds out our creature suite. In addition to that, we're playing some burn spells to get things out of the way in Burst Lightning and Lightning Helix. Burst Lightning is a 1-mana, just a shock, deals 2 damage to any target. However, you can kick it for an additional 4 mana, so 5 mana total, to have it deal 4 damage instead. This gets things out of the way. Burns face for that last bit of damage after they stabilize. And then same thing with Lightning Helix, say 2 mana, deal 3 damage, gain 3 life, and it fulfills the same role as Burst Lightning, just a little bit better against the aggro decks. And then we have additional ways to trigger Valiant that also do other stuff. Maybe the best card in the deck, Monstrous Rage, is a 1-mana instant. Target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Create a monster roll token attached to it. A monster roll is an aura that gives Trample and +1/+1. So really this gives +3/+1 and Trample, and the +1/+1 and Trample stay on it. This triggers Valiant and then also makes combat really, really, really hard if your opponent has to play around it. We're playing for Sheltered by Ghost. Sheltered by Ghost is an aura. Auras trigger Valiant when you put them on a creature, which is great for this deck. When it enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield, so it's an O-ring effect. And enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and has lifelink and ward 2. So great against other aggro decks. This is another aggro deck killer because it's just as fast, and playing the 4 Sheltered by Ghosts and Lightning Helix is just disgusting. Gets things out of the way and triggers Valiant. And then we're playing 3 Shard Mages. Rescue is a 1 mana flash aura. When it enters, enchanted creature has hexproof and enchanted creature has +1/+1. So this card can mess up combat, but really we're playing this card to protect our creatures from opposing removal spells while also pumping up our creatures and triggering Valiant even easier. That being said, as far as the mana base goes, Restless Bivouac can just kind of get there when they wipe our board. We rely a lot more on creatures than the other red decks. But when it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It targets, so it triggers Valiant. So that's something really important to remember. And then we can kind of trigger Valiant on a stick for a lot less mana. With Rockface Village, we can pay 1 mana and tap it to have target lizard, mouse, otter, or raccoon you control get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. This also triggers Valiant, and we just need this land and like one other land to trigger Valiant every single turn. So this is all very, very powerful and really, really reliant on the Mice and Valiant synergies. As far as the sideboard goes, Destroy Evil is for enchantments and creatures with toughness 4 or greater, like specifically for temporary lockdown, are very, very good against that card. Lithomanic Barrage allows us to deal with these like Haughty Djinns and Abernoculuses and things like that. Torture Tower, mostly for these other aggressive decks, makes other Heartfire heroes not trigger, and it's just a decent removal spell. Screaming Nemesis against decks that we're going to be doing a lot of combat with, so we can make combat really, really awkward. You have to remember Screaming Nemesis doesn't combo with our deck, or at least combo with our Mice synergies though. And it's really good against decks that are gaining life because we can just like Burst Lightning around Screaming Nemesis and not have to worry about that life gain. We're playing 2 Witchstalker Frenzy, because it's a 4 mana card that costs 1 less for each creature that attack this turn. It's really hard to make this only trigger 1 mana. Or only costs 1 mana, and deals 5 damage to target creature. We side this in against decks that have large blockers that we have a hard time attacking through. And then we're playing 3 Sunspine Links, which is a 4 mana 5/4. Players can't gain life, damage can't be prevented. And when Sunspine Links enters, it deals damage to each player equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls. So we're going to be siding this in against decks that gain a lot of life, but also we're going to side this in against decks that play a lot of different colors and don't have a lot of basics, like Domain. This is the Boros Mice deck, and let's talk about these sideboard cards. Destroy Evil is our enchantment hate, also decent against cards like Shieldred and stuff like that. Lithomanic Barrage, great against blue and white decks, frankly. Torture Tower is good against our aggro decks, also really, really good against the enduring cards and Emberheart Challenger and stuff like that. Screaming Nemesis is what we want against decks that are looking to block us. Witchstalker Frenzy, again, great against decks that are looking to block. And then Sunspine Links is against decks that are greedy with their mana or are looking to gain life, really. The most popular deck in Standard is Esper Self Bounce. Against this deck, we're going to be siding in our Lithomanic Barrages, our Sunspine Linkses, and I'm a fan of Torch the Tower as well. There's an argument for Destroy Evil just so they can't bounce their enchantments, but I think that's just interacting too much and we should just be trying to defeat our opponent as fast as possible. Gonna be siding out of Screaming Nemesis. It's just a lot of mana to keep bouncing back to our hand, and they really aren't looking to block our creatures per se. Gonna be siding out of Shelter by Ghosts. It's just too easy for them to answer. And we're gonna be siding out of Mabel just because we can't really rely on too many synergies. Mabel's 3 mana, so a similar reason to Screaming Nemesis. And I'm just trying to defeat them as literally fast as possible. So this is how I'm gonna sideboard against Esper Pixie. The second most popular deck is the Gruul aggro deck. Against Gruul aggro, Torch the Tower is excellent. Screaming Nemesis is really good because they're looking to block, or really lets us block super profitably. And then Witchstalker Frenzy is good because it rewards us for continuing to attack. We're going to sideboard out of our Hired Claw. Really focusing on these synergies with Manifold Mouse and whatnot. Mabel is just a lot of mana for something that is not super duper fast, which we need to be super duper fast against this deck. And my side out of some Firepush Swordmaster. They have a lot of removal, so going really wide is a little unrealistic, but we're keeping some in. So this is how I sideboard against Gruul. Against Dimir Self Bounce, we're bringing in these Lithomanic Barrages, the Torch the Towers, and then we're bringing out the Sheltered by Ghosts just because they can so easily answer this stuff, especially with nowhere to run in their deck. But this is how I sideboard against Dimir Self Bounce. The fourth most popular deck is Golgari Midrange. Against Golgari, we're bringing in these Destroy Evils because it answers Preacher of the Schism, Sentinel, Shieldred, the Demon if they play it. Just answers so many cards in the deck. Similarly, I like Witchstalker Frenzy to get that stuff out of the way. Now, there's a few cards we kind of have to bring out because they're bad. Sheltered by Ghosts is just too bad because they can answer it so easily, and Monstrous Rage, they can like kill in response super easily as well. So while we want to bring out Screaming Nemesis, we kind of have to bring 2 more in just as more threats because these cards have to come out. And so this is how I'm going to sideboard against Golgari. The 5th most popular deck is Dimir Midrange. Against Dimir Mid, we're bringing in Torch the Towers. Answering Enduring Curiosity I think is super important still. Witchstalker Frenzy is really solid as well. Destroy Evil could be good if something like Oil Deep Gear Hulk becomes really popular. I'm not quite sure yet, so I'm not going to bring it in. We're bringing out these Screaming Nemesis and a few Sheltered by Ghosts, and that's how I'm going to sideboard against Dimir. The 6th most popular deck is the Gruul Prowess deck. We're going to sideboard the same as we did against Gruul Aggro. They're really similar. The Gruul Prowess deck just leans a little bit heavier on like Slickshot Show Off and Questing Druid and stuff. The 7th most popular deck is Domain. Against Domain, Destroy Evil is insane. They have a ton of enchantments and creatures that we can take out with Destroy Evil. Similar to Witchstalker Frenzy, and Sunspine Lynx is built for beating Domain, to be totally real. Bringing out Screaming Nemesis just because they have too many answers. Similar with Sheltered by Ghosts. Lightning Helix doesn't really do much, and then we're going to shave on Burst Lightning because, again, besides Burning Face, doesn't really do much. But this is how I'm going to sideboard against the Zur Domain deck. The 8th most popular deck is Jeskai Convoke. Against Jeskai Convoke, we love these Lithomanic Barrages. We love Torch the Tower. We love Screaming Nemesis because it makes things just very hard to block. And we're going to be siding out of the Shard Mage's Rescue because they don't have a ton of removal. Postboard, they bring in 4 Torch the Tower, which is a lot, but I'm not a big fan of Shard Mage's Rescue. I just want to be playing my creatures as fast as possible. Going to shave on some Hired Claw, and then we're going to shave 1 Mabel. So that's how I'm going to sideboard against Jeskai Convoke. Against Mono Red, we're going to sideboard the same as we did against Gruul, the Gruul variants as well, which is the 9th most popular deck. And then the 10th most popular deck is Azorius Tempo, the Azorius Oculus deck. Destroy Evil is just nuts against this deck. Maybe. Magic Online. You can do it. There we go. All right. Destroy Evil is just nuts against this deck. Same thing with Lithomanic Barrage. And I'm actually a fan of Screaming Nemesis because their things are so big, it's just so awkward for them to block. That being said, Lightning Helix does effectively nothing. We're going to shave on Hired Claw. That's our flex slot. Burst Lightning eliminates nothing unless we just spend 1 million mana on it to take out a Hadijin. So I'm going to sideboard against Azorius Oculus. Now, if you're playing Boros Mice, you're pretty much bought into playing these cards. As you can see, the deck isn't that figured out. You really only have 48 non-flex slots in the main deck and only 3 non-flex slots in the sideboard. If you want to look at the cards you pretty much have to play, please pause this video so you can check that out. But we're going to focus on the flex slots. So these are the flex slots in this deck. You're going to be picking 12 of these 26 cards for the main deck and actually 12 of these 18 cards for the sideboard. So let's talk about them. You could play up to 4 Cheeky House Mouse. It is a adventure card where one side is Squeak By. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures power 3 or greater this turn. And on his creature side is a 2/1 for 1. This is a very aggressive card if you want to lean even farther into that and into the mouse combos that exist with the deck. We play Shard Mage's Rescue 3 and 4. Has Flash, enchant creature you control. As long as Shard Mage's Rescue entered this turn, enchant a creature has hexproof, and enchant a creature gets +1/+1. This is very good against decks that play a lot of targeted removal spells. You can play up to 4 Burst Lightning. It's effectively a shock, dealing 2 damage to any target. However, you can pay an additional 4 mana for 5 mana total to have it deal 4 damage instead. Really, you would play this card to get other creatures out of the way, really good against other aggressive decks and stuff. You can play up to 4 Hired Claw. The issue with Hired Claw, while being a very aggressive red 1-drop, it doesn't contribute to the mouse synergies at all. But whenever you attack with 1 or more lizards, which Hired Claw would be your only lizard, it deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you can pay 2 mana to put a +1/+1 counter on Hired Claw. Activate only if an opponent lost life this turn, and only once each turn. This is just a really aggressive card, and it's a mana dump, so if you want that, there you have that. You could play Sheltered by Ghosts 3 and 4, mostly for other aggressive strategies because it gives lifelink. It's a 2 mana aura that when it enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controlled until Sheltered by Ghosts leaves the battlefield. An enchanter creature gets +1/+0 as lifelink and ward 2. It's just good against the aggressive decks. You can play up to 2 Inti, which I can't believe is still in Standard. It's a 2-mana 2/2. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gets trampled until end of turn. When you discard one or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. So what's interesting about Inti is it allows us to dig, and it can trigger Valiant. However, it doesn't combo with any of the mice synergies in and of itself, and it might just be a little cute because really we're just going to be puking everything on the battlefield anyway. You can play up to 4 Lightning Helix. It's a 2 mana, deal 3 damage, gain 3 life instant. Just generally a very solid card, especially against aggressive decks. Play up to 2 Screaming Nemesis in the main deck. It's good against decks that are looking to block. And then you can play Mabel 3 and 4. Mabel is a Mice Lord, but when Mabel, Heir to the Cragflame, enters Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and equip 2. Just a decent Mice Lord, especially if we lean even deeper into these mouse synergies with like Cheeky House Mouse and stuff like that. More Mabel is probably where you want to go. Very, very good if we're going wide. Not so great if we're not. Cragflame can be solid if the game goes a little long, but meh. But we're going to be selecting 12 of these cards. As far as the sideboard goes, you can play in Destroy Evil number 4 for further enchantment and things with big butt hate. You'll be playing Rest in Peace to exile all graveyards and make sure that whenever a card or token we put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead, just as additional graveyard hate. Lithomanic Barrage, it can't be countered, deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Deals 5 damage instead if the target is white and or blue. So it's really good against decks that are playing white and blue creatures and planeswalkers. Playing up to 2, I don't know why the number's not there. Torch the Tower. Just very good against aggressive decks, dealing 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If this spell was bargained, instead it deals 3 damage to that permanent you gain, and you scry 1. And then if a permanent was dealt damage by Torch the Tower or die this turn, exile it instead. Really good against the enduring cards, really good against aggressive decks, particularly good against Heartfire Hero, because it'll get exiled instead of dealing damage to you. Again, Screaming Nemesis, we already talked about. You could play up to 2 in the sideboard, really good against decks that are looking to block. Same thing with the Witchstalker Frenzy, actually. It's a 4 mana instant, costs 1 less for each creature that's attacking this turn. We go very wide in this deck, and deals 5 damage to target creature. Again, very good against decks that are looking to block, especially like Shieldreds and stuff, or like Preacher of the Schisms or whatever. Play up to 3 Sunspine Links. Players can't gain life, damage can't be prevented, and when Sunspine Links enters, it deals damage to each player equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls. Very good against decks that are aggressive with their mana, like Esper Bounce or Domain or things like that. And then Ghost Vacuum as graveyard hate as well. 1 mana artifact, you can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard. So Ghost Vacuum, 1 mana artifact, we can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard. And then just as an additional thing, you can pay 6 mana and tap it to sacrifice Ghost Vacuum. Put each creature card, exile the Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them has a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types, and activate only as a sorcery. So, like, while this is less mana and not, a specific color, you can only exile 1 card a turn. It does have upside, though. Or we could just, like, be able to pay 2 mana, forget about it. They never have a graveyard. So it's tough between these 2 pieces of graveyard hate. We're going to select 12 of these cards for your sideboard and 12 of these 26 cards for your main deck to add to your non-flex slots. And then you have your very own but stock version of Boros Mice in Standard. So the first play pattern is, remember that Mabel creates an equipment, and equipping targets, which we know from Nadu and Modern, but targeting of an ability triggers Valiant. So remember that equipping the equipment triggers the Valiant on Emberheart Challenger and Heartfire Hero and the white one drop I forgot the name of, and that kind of stuff. Also remember the insane mouse synergies, alongside Valiant. If we have Manifold Mouse, every single turn Manifold Mouse triggers and targets Emberheart Challenger or Heartfire Hero or that white one drop that's right here wherever I put the picture that I forgot the name of. It will trigger Valiant on that card in addition to giving it double strike. Most of the time you're giving it double strike or trample. It's an amazing mouse synergy, and that's really the biggest reason why we're playing this. We're also playing Rockface Village, which, even though it's a land ability, we get to trigger Valiant every single turn with that if we want to as well. And knowing these synergies is really, really important whether you're playing or playing against the deck. And then a very classic strong, because Screaming Nemesis is a newer card, but a pretty known synergy is Screaming Nemesis exists in this deck between the main deck and the sideboard, even though it's not a mouse. And it very often against decks that are looking to gain life, they can burst lightning their own Screaming Nemesis, deal the 2 damage to their opponent so they can't gain life for the rest of the game. But an even better and maybe less known way to do this is if you jam with a whole bunch, you can actually like deal damage and then Witchstalker Frenzy your own Screaming Nemesis. And even though Witchstalker Frenzy can't deal damage to face, Screaming Nemesis is dealt 5 damage, so it can deal that 5 damage to face very often for 1 mana off of Witchstalker Frenzy. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.